The day I found out, I was sitting at my kitchen table in Austin, eating leftover pad thai and half watching the news. My phone buzzed. A voice message from my cousin Nate, which was unusual because Nate never called. He barely even texted, so I put down my fork and pressed play. What I heard on that recording changed everything I thought I knew about my family, and about myself. I need to back up. My name is not important. What is important is that by the time I was 29 years old, I had built something from nothing. I grew up in a small house in Lubbock, Texas, with my parents and my older brother and younger sister. We weren't poor exactly, but we were the kind of family that clipped coupons and wore shoes until the soles peeled off. My dad worked at a logistics warehouse. My mom did bookkeeping part-time for a chiropractor's office. They did their best. I know that now, but I also know that from the time I was about 12, I was the one in the family who was different, and they never let me forget it. I liked school in a way that made my brother uncomfortable and my sister roll her eyes. I got a full scholarship to UT Austin. I studied computer science and finance, worked 2 part-time jobs, graduated with honors. By 24, I was working at a software company. By 27, I had co-founded my own SaaS startup, enterprise-level HR compliance tools, the kind of thing that sounds boring until you realize how much corporations pay for it. By 29, we had closed a Series A round and I was earning more money than my entire family had made combined in the previous decade. I didn't tell them, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I'd watched what money does to families. I'd seen it happen to friends, read enough Reddit threads to know the pattern. So I drove a 2017 Honda Civic. I rented a modest apartment in East Austin. I wore the same rotation of jeans and flannels. When my parents asked how work was going, I said, "Fine, good, staying busy." They assumed I was doing okay, maybe a little better than okay, but nothing that would raise eyebrows. Meanwhile, I was quietly doing something I now understand was a mistake dressed up as love. It started small. My dad's truck needed a new transmission. He mentioned it once over the phone very casually with that particular tone he had, not asking, just stating a fact into the air. I wired him $2,000 the next morning through an LLC I had for miscellaneous expenses, which I called Ridgeline Consulting. I told him it was from a work bonus. He thanked me once and never mentioned it again, then my mom's dental work, then my brother's rent when he got laid off, then my sister's car payment when she was 3 months behind. I told myself I was helping. That's what I told myself every single time. The thing about my family is that they are not cruel people in the way villains in movies are cruel. They're not scheming. They're not calculating. They are simply, and I say this with years of therapy behind me, people who decided a long time ago that I was the odd one out and that my success, when it came, wasn't really success so much as luck or weirdness or something that didn't quite count. My brother used to call me the robot growing up because I studied instead of watching football. My sister used to say I was too intense, and would give her these looks, the kind that made it clear that whatever I had accomplished was somehow exhausting to be around. My parents never said anything as blunt as that, but they had a way of changing the subject whenever I talked about work, of turning back to my brother's hunting trips or my sister's kids within about 30 seconds. I was, in their world, a supporting character. Useful when needed, easy to overlook the rest of the time. Over 3 years, through Ridgeline Consulting and a few other shell structures I'd set up for tax purposes, I moved a significant amount of money into my family's lives, paid off a chunk of my parents' second mortgage, about $42,000, covered my brother's DUI attorney fees and then his moving costs when his girlfriend kicked him out, set my sister up with a down payment gift on a townhouse, routed through my accountant so it looked like a family loan being forgiven. In total, over 36 months, I had quietly funneled just over $110,000 into keeping my family comfortable. None of them knew it was me. They knew about Ridgeline Consulting. My dad mentioned it once, something about that company that's been helping out. My mom had assumed it was some kind of government assistance program, which made me laugh alone in my car for a solid minute. My sister thought it might be a nonprofit. My brother didn't think about it at all. I told myself this was protection, that if they knew the money was from me, the robot, the odd one out, they'd either resent it or start expecting more. This way, I was just making things easier, anonymous, clean. I should have known better. The voice message from Nate, my cousin on my dad's side, the only person in my extended family I've always genuinely liked, was shaky. He said, "Hey, I don't really know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. I was at your parents' house last weekend for Uncle Ray's birthday. They didn't know I was still in the kitchen when they started talking. I recorded some of it because I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm sending it to you right now. I'm sorry. I love you. The audio file came through a few seconds later. I opened it with my phone flat on the table, pad thai going cold. It was my sister's voice first. God, did you see her outfit when she dropped by last month? That flannel thing. She looked like she worked at a feed store. My mom laughed. Not a mean laugh, just an easy one, the kind you do when something lands and you don't stop to think about whether you should. My brother said she's always been like that, no sense of style, no social life. Just that laptop, she doesn't have a real life. My sister said, like, she has a job, sure, but what does she actually have? She's almost 30. And she lives alone and she drives that beat-up Civic. That's sad. She was always so serious, my mom said. Then lighter, remember when she was in high school and she used to make those little spreadsheets for everything? Even her weekends? They laughed again. All of them. Then my dad's voice. Low, a little reluctant, but there. She means well. She never really figured out how to live, you know? Like book smart, maybe? But she's just kind of. A pause, a sad case, honestly. Pathetic was the word my sister used about 4 seconds later. Not shouted. Not cruel. Just conversational. Like she was describing the weather. It's just kind of pathetic, right? Like, she's going to wake up at 45 and realize she has nothing. And then my mom, quiet, I just worry about her. I sat at that table for a long time after the audio ended. I didn't cry right away. That surprised me. I thought I would. But what I actually felt, sitting there in my quiet apartment with the TV murmuring in the background, was something more like, oh, so that's what they think. That's what they've always thought. And they see no contradiction, none at all. The following Monday morning, my sister called me. I almost didn't answer, but I did, because I have always answered. She wanted to know if I could look into her property tax situation. She thought she'd been overcharged. Could I help her dispute it? She'd heard I was good with numbers. The whole conversation took 11 minutes. She said thank you once. At the end, the way you say thank you to a customer service rep. I said I'd look into it. I got off the phone. I sat very still. Then I called my financial advisor, a woman named Philippa who I'd worked with for 2 years and who was sharp and no nonsense and never made me feel like I had to explain myself. I said, I need to restructure something. She said, tell me what you're thinking. And I did. What I'd built over 3 years was not complicated to dismantle. It just required planning. Ridgeline Consulting had been the main vehicle for the family payments. I had a separate LLC, Stonemark Capital Partners, that held the note on a portion of my parents' refinanced mortgage, a structure I'd set up through a financial attorney specifically to keep things arm's length. My brother's rent subsidy came through an automated transfer tied to a holding account. My sister's family loan forgiveness was already done. That money was gone, no mechanism left. But there were 2 things still active. The automated transfer to my brother, $800 a month, set up to cover the difference between his rent and what he could actually afford on his warehouse salary, and the note on my parents' mortgage, which meant that the entity collecting their monthly payment was ultimately me. I didn't pull anything immediately. I'm not impulsive. I'm actually, as my family once observed, extremely serious and good with spreadsheets. So I made a spreadsheet, column A, what each person received, column B, the date the last payment was made, column C, what would happen if it stopped. My brother, without the 800 MON supplement, his rent would exceed his take-home pay. He'd have 60 to 90 days before he'd need to find a cheaper place, or a second job, or a roommate. My parents, Stonemark, held the second lien note. If payments stopped flowing through the support structure, the note would come due. My parents didn't know the details of Ridgeline or Stonemark. They'd signed some paperwork years ago through a third-party servicer, and they believed they were paying a regular mortgage company. Technically, they were. It was just that the mortgage company ultimately fed back to me. I spent 3 weeks thinking. I talked to Philippa. I talked to my therapist, Dr. Okonkwo, who has a very calm voice and a very good poker face, and who said, what do you want the outcome to be? Which is the question I'd been avoiding. Did I want them to know it was me? Did I want an apology? Did I want them to feel what I had felt in that kitchen, listening to them talk about me like I was a case study in mediocrity? Honestly, yes. Yes to all of it. But I was also realistic enough to know that a direct confrontation would accomplish nothing. I had tried in smaller ways over the years, pushed back gently, mentioned my work more directly, been proud about something, and every time the conversation had rerouted. My family had a talent for not receiving information they didn't want, so I decided to do it differently. I sent a letter. Not an email, a physical letter, on Ridgeline Consulting letterhead, sent through my attorney's office, so it came back through official channels. It was professional and brief. It stated that due to internal restructuring, Ridgeline Consulting would be discontinuing its support services effective in 60 days. It thanked the recipients for their relationship with the company. It offered no further explanation, because none was owed. My brother's supplement stopped on the 1st of October. My parents' note was transferred back to a standard third-party servicer, one that was considerably less flexible on payment timing. I didn't tell them it was me. I didn't call. I didn't text. My mom called first. About 2 weeks after the letter would have arrived, I let it go to voicemail. She said she was calling because they'd received some paperwork about their mortgage and it was confusing and could I help them look into it. Same tone she always used when she needed something. Warm but purposeful. Like I was a helpful resource. My brother texted, "Hey, did you hear about this Ridgeline thing? It's messing me up pretty bad." My sister sent me a link to an article about financial support scams with the message, "This is giving me bad vibes. Did you know about this company helping mom and dad?" None of them asked me directly. None of them thought I might be the source, because in their model of the world I was the sad case, the robot in the flannel, the one with the beat-up Civic and no life. That person didn't have $110,000 to give away quietly over 3 years. That person was, in the word my sister used, kind of pathetic. I did not respond to any of the messages. About a month later, I was at my desk when I got an email from my sister's email address. Formal, weirdly so, like she'd Googled how to write a professional email. She was reaching out to Ridgeline Consulting directly about reinstating support services. She had found the address through some business search tool. The email explained that she was a family member of longtime recipients and wanted to understand why services had been discontinued. I did not respond to that either. Ridgeline had no customer service department. It had me, and I had decided I was no longer in the business of making things easier for people who thought I was sad. My cousin Nate called in November. Not about the money, he didn't know about any of it. He called because he'd talked to my mom and she'd mentioned they were having some financial stress and he was worried. I told him I knew. I told him I was handling my own life. He was quiet for a moment and then he said, "Good, you should. That's the thing nobody tells you about being the family safety net. People always ask why you kept doing it. Why you kept wiring money and paying bills and smoothing things over for people who talked about you like you were furniture when you weren't in the room." And the answer is not a simple one. It's not stupidity. It's not weakness. It's this very human thing where you spend your whole childhood on the outside of a circle, and you think, maybe if I'm useful enough, maybe if I make things easy enough, eventually the circle will move and you'll be inside it. It doesn't. The circle doesn't move. You just get better at standing outside it while looking like you're okay. I moved into a nicer apartment in November. Downtown Austin, 14th floor, a view of the lake. I bought furniture I actually liked instead of whatever was on sale at IKEA. I started taking weekends off in a way I genuinely hadn't in years. I drove my Civic to a dealership and traded it in for a used Audi Q5. Nothing flashy but solid, comfortable, mine. My parents eventually talked to a housing counselor about their mortgage situation. I know this because my dad mentioned it in a voicemail, the first time he called just to talk without an ask embedded in it, in longer than I can remember. His voice sounded tired. He said they were figuring it out. He said quietly that he was proud of me. He didn't know what I had stopped doing. He was just, I think, saying the thing he should have said years ago, for reasons that had nothing to do with the mortgage. Maybe some part of him had started to wonder. I called him back that afternoon. We talked for 40 minutes about nothing important. His garden, my work in the vaguest terms, a road trip he was thinking about taking with my mom to see the Grand Canyon. He laughed at something I said about traffic on I-35. It was the most normal conversation we had had in years. I didn't bring up the money. I didn't bring up the recording. I didn't say any of the things I'd rehearsed alone at 2 in the morning during the worst of it. Some things don't need to be said out loud to be understood. My sister sent me a birthday card in December, handwritten, which she had not done since we were kids. She said she hoped I was doing well. She said she missed me. She said maybe we could get lunch sometime soon. I read it twice. Then I put it on my refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a cactus that I bought at a gas station in Marfa, and I went to make coffee, and I stood at my kitchen window watching the city below, and thought, okay, this is what it feels like to have your own life. Not the ending you see in movies, maybe. Nobody showed up to apologize. Nobody had a dramatic breakdown in a parking lot and confessed everything. My family did not understand what had happened or why, not fully, not yet. But something had shifted. Not in them, or not only in them, in me. I had spent 3 years buying my way toward a seat at a table I was never actually excluded from by accident. They excluded me on purpose, casually, the way you exclude furniture from a conversation. And I had kept paying for the room anyway. I don't pay for rooms I'm not welcome in anymore. That's the thing about being the sad case. Sometimes the SATADS quietly owns the building.